Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Christ the royal master leads against the foe. Forward into battle, see his banners go. Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war, with the cross of Jesus going on before. Oh, for a faith that will not shrink, though pressed by every foe, that will not tremble on the brink of any earthly woe, that will not murmur or complain beneath a chastening rod, but in the hour of grief or pain will lean upon its God. A faith that shines more bright and clear when tempests rage without, that when in danger knows no fear, in darkness feels no doubt. Lord, give us such a faith as this, and then whatever may come, we'll taste and hear the hallowed bliss of an eternal home. A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify, a never-dying soul to save, and fitted for the sky, to serve the present age, my calling to fulfill. Oh, may it all my powers engage to do my Master's will. Arm me with jealous care, as in thy sight to live, and o' thy servant, Lord, prepare a strict account to give. Help me to watch and pray, and on thyself rely. Assured if I my trust betray, I shall forever die. Rise up, O men of God, have done with lesser things. Give heart and mind and soul and strength to serve the King of Kings. Rise up, O men of God, his kingdom tarries long. Bring in the day of brotherhood and end the night of wrong. Rise up, O men of God, the church for you doth wait. Her strength unequal to her task, rise up and make her great. Lift high the cross of Christ, tread where his feet have trod. As brothers of the Son of Man, rise up, O men of God.
Good evening! And if Levi was here, he would say, let's edify. He's probably using the bathroom. How are we all doing tonight? Y'all doing okay? Let me make sure I'm pumping in through my audio here. Yep, okay. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he sealed my pardon. Paid the debt and made me free. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he took my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free. I was lost, but Jesus found me, found the sheep that went astray. Threw his loving arms around me, drew me back into his way. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he took my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free. I'm so glad I learned to trust him, precious Jesus, Savior, friend. And I know that he is with me, will be with me to the end. Sing, oh, sing of my Redeemer. With his blood he purchased me. On the cross he bought my pardon, paid the debt, and made me free. Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Let's edify. Ezra, Bible, please.
You're a
Oh,
little,
wait, here. Dude.
you're a little late for that, but yes, let's edify.
I'm never too late to edify. Excuse him, Law. Nice glasses, by the way.
Well, thank you. One thing I don't like about him is,
The reflections.
yeah, and I don't know how to fix it.
You can't. It's because they're glasses. So you do like I do, and you learn to live with it, or you take them off. But if you take them off, it kind of defeats the purpose of having them.
Yeah, so.
Which, by the way, I should actually be wearing mine from my black eyeglass case. But, you know, it's over on the table, and I'm over here, and I'm not going to go over there and get it. Perhaps one of my kids could bring it to me, but, you know, he's sitting over there arguing with his mother, and the other one's out in the kitchen, so. Or rather, his mother's arguing with him, whichever way you want to look at it. My mother decided that she one time stopped and when she was having a conversation with me, and she says, thought to herself, "Why in the world am I arguing with a 2-year-old?"
Mhm.
I'm sure there's a lot of people that have that thought.
Could be. No,
Yeah.
a lot of parents. It's apparent that a lot of parents do not have that thought because they just simply um, continue to argue, fuss, and fight with their 2-year-olds all the way up until
Your
they're 20 years old.
your glare doesn't even look that bad. Mine's like taking over my eyes.
The difference is that you're in front of a computer screen. I am in front of a phone.
So he
Also, my light source is above me and to the right. So you do
Wow.
see the phone right up here, but if I get my hand just right, you don't see any glare whatsoever. Well, you do, just a little bit. Anyhow, we're not here. We lost our one viewer.
You and your glare, TJ.
You and your glare. That was glaring. It was a glaring.
Glaring.
It was a glaring topic.
They didn't make eggs.
It wasn't transparent enough, I guess.
Oh dear.
In other words,
Hey.
we're being a real pain to CJ.
Acts chapter 25? Or
Are we
should
going to
we wait?
examine this under the lens?
Well, that's.
He's about ready to throw his Bible at me. O'Shea is still, I think, in the final stages of the prayer. So we may want to if you want to go ahead and sing another song, or do you want to go ahead
Okay.
and jump right in? I don't have one for me tonight. I've got a headache, actually. So I sang as much as I was able to under the reading. So if you want to go ahead and sing another one, I'll back out and let you do that. So I don't look like a wallflower and detract from the
Okay.
brilliance of your voice while you do that.
Yeah. No. It's amazing because I was on my walk and I didn't realize how blurry everything was. I was like taking off my glasses and I'm like, wow.
It
Everything.
it totally opens a new world, doesn't it?
Yeah. I'm like, I didn't think my eyes were this bad, but everything's more vibrant.
Two options. Those are your two options because you're not going to be able to do anything outside. It's kind of dark out. So go ahead while we wait for.
I'm gonna fix my boat.
Well, you can do that while we're waiting for people to come in.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with your boot?
Here, show you.
Anyway, go ahead and CJ and sing while we were waiting for more people to arrive. Somebody better send this over to Sister T and Sam. Where's Sam? That
Ought to be
slacker.
like me.
And then I'll handle tech after that.
Ought to be like the blessed Redeemer. This is my constant
Longing and prayer. Am I feeding through?
That they are for no, that they are forfeit all advantage. Jesus, my perfect. Like this, it doesn't work when I can see you laughing. Jesus, I fulfill blindness to bear. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer. Yes, thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, stamp thine image deep on my heart. ought to be like thee, full of compassion, loving, forgiving, tender and kind, helping the helpless, cheering the fainting, seeking the wandering sinner to find. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, and thine own image deep on thy heart. Oh, to be like thee, lonely in spirit, holy and harmless, patient and brave, meekly enduring cruel reproaches, willing to suffer others to save. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, stamp thine own image deep on my heart. Oh, to be like thee, Lord, I am coming, now to receive thy anointing divine. All that I am and have I am bringing, Lord, from this moment all shall be thine. Oh, to be like thee, oh, to be like thee, blessed Redeemer, pure as thou art. Come in thy sweetness, come in thy fullness, stamp thine own image deep on my heart. Do we want to do some more, or do we want
Well, we
to
got two
start?
people. What?
Alright.
What, O'Chef? Oh, he says, do we want to build a snowman? Probably in about 2 months.
Bring it on.
Well, you know,
So,
like we want about 80 inches this winter.
Yes, I'm good.
Somebody was forecasting that somewhere for our area.
He was Larry.
Well, no, because I heard it at the bus barn.
Yeah.
So it's probably Don, but he heard it from someone else. You want to turn that sideways, I think. Oh, wait a minute, that's the handle. Never mind. Yeah, never mind. Isn't that creepy?
so most recently, what we have is the
Where are we at?
in Act 24.
Okay.
We have the trial of Paul, and Paul gives his defense before Felix, 10-14, and then after hearing his defense, basically what Paul says there is my accusers, the Jews, don't know what they're talking about, and then Felix, having knowledge of the way, procrastinated and says, I'm gonna wait till Lysias comes, and when he comes down, he's the commander. Hi, Angie. He's going to make a decision on your case. And so some days go by, and his wife, Drusilla, sent for Paul and heard him concerning the faith. Paul preached a message. Philip drags his feet, and basically he could have let him go, but he wants money out of Paul. And he drags his feet until Festus comes along and keeps him in prison, wanting to do the Jews a favor in verse 27. I tried to keep it short. How'd I do?
Very good.
That kind of takes us to chapter 25, where we are today.
Hi, Angie. Hello, Reba, and hello, O'Shea, who is on tech. So what we are in is chapter 25. We're going to pick up there this evening, and let's see.
1 through 12, maybe?
I see CJ got his glasses.
Yes, he did.
Yes, I did.
Geek CJ is back.
What is it we're making a play by now?
Hi, y'all.
Let's actually go to verse 9 at first.
Okay. Now when Festus had come, you're in the New King James,
Yes, he is.
and you're not Alicia, so I'm gonna read from my Bible. Sorry, Alicia, no offense.
This is O'Shea.
Yeah, I know. Now when Festus had come to the province after 3 days, he went up from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Then the high priest and the chief men of the Jews informed him against Paul, and they petitioned him, asking a favor against him, that he would summon him to Jerusalem, while they lay in ambush along the road to kill him. This sounds familiar. But Festus answered that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself was going there shortly. Therefore he said, those who have authority among you go with me and accuse this man to see if there's any fault in him. And when he had remained among them more than 10 days, he went down to Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, he commanded Paul to be brought. When he had come, the Jews who had come down from Jerusalem stood about and laid many serious complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. While he answered for himself, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I offended in anything at all. But Festus, wanting to do the Jews a favor, answered Paul and said, are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and there be judged before me concerning these things?
Okay. So what we have is Festus, a new governor, taking over from Felix. Felix, having been a long time governor of Judea, again, we don't know. I believe I should have looked this up. I didn't, but I believe he succeeded Pontius Pilate. But there may have been a few governors in between. Doesn't really matter. Suffice it to say that at some point in time after Pontius Pilate was governor, Felix took over from him, and he was a governor for a long time. He, in fact, married a Jewess by the name of Drusilla or Drusilla. Depends upon how you want to pronounce her name. And he knew the law and he knew the prophets. He knew of the way. But he either retired or he was recalled to Rome or he was appointed to a new place, new governorship. And in his absence or in his leaving, they assigned Porcius Festus to the governorship of Judea. And so when Festus comes up, he goes from Caesarea to see to matters in Jerusalem. And he gets there, he's met by the high priest, the chief of the Jews, who then inform him about Paul. Now remember, this is 2 years after the events of Acts 21. This is Acts chapter 20. Yeah, it's Acts chapter 21. No?
No, I think
it's Acts chapter 21. The end of chapter 21.
Yeah. Yep.
This is 2 years after that event. 2 years after the events of where Paul stood in front of the council declaring, I am called in question of the resurrection of the dead. 2 years after the events of 40 men who have bound themselves by a curse, saying they would not eat of anything until they had killed Paul. You would think, again, by this time, that passion would have died. That the feeling would have gone. And they would have just simply, okay, let's let Paul languish in prison or just simply let him go. But no. They had not come to their senses. They were certainly fit to be tied over this person, to be holding a grudge over this man for over 2 years. So we're in verse 3, Hosea. They desired a favor against Paul, or favor of Felix or Festus, whichever way you want to read that passage. Asking a favor against him or a favor from him, that is Festus, would summon Paul to Jerusalem. Now, of course, they didn't tell Festus this, but they were going to lay in wait and seek to kill him.
And kind of says, that sounds familiar as I was reading it.
That work? So it does kind of sound familiar. It makes you wonder if those same guys were still alive.
Are these the same guys? It makes you wonder if these are the same guys that are trying to keep their oath not to eat, which, by the way,
if they were trying to keep that oath, they had severely broken it.
Yeah, they would have expired.
Go ahead, Hosea.
Man, the fasting on those guys.
The human body is at most only able to withstand up to 40 days. And doctors say less than that before you basically succumb to eating your own, consuming your own muscle and mass.
Yeah.
For eating, and you can't go very long. You can't go very long at all without drinking. Period. And so a lot of times what happens is a lot of fasting, and this still goes on today. When they talk about fasting, it's interesting that they talk about Jesus is. You need to wait just a little bit longer. You can see some of the bubbling happening up there, bud.
10 minutes.
Oh, that's not been 10 minutes, has it?
Hmm?
Not been 10 minutes, has it? Okay.
10
Anyhow, what happens today is that they will not eat or drink during the day, but they will eat at night. The intermittent fasting is a lot of what you see going on. Or they will not eat at all, but they will drink at night.
What do you
Or
think?
some people will actually eat. It will actually drink throughout the day, but they won't eat.
Do you think that's kind of the idea of the oath in 23?
I don't know. It's hard to say, but it does say that they wouldn't eat or drink anything until they killed him.
Right.
If I remember it correctly.
Yeah.
What? Go ahead.
I never caught that before. Neither eat nor drink. You can only go 3 days without drinking anything?
They say you're lucky to make it past 4.
Oh.
I don't know. We'd have to actually look at the science, but I think you can go longer than that.
That's what I've read in all of my survival books. You're lucky to make it past 4 without going insane.
But yeah, 23 verse 12 says they would neither eat nor drink till they had killed Paul.
Yeah.
Jesus, however, fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. And if I remember correctly, it said he didn't eat or drink. So, and it was a common occurrence. So a lot of times, you can go longer, especially if you're forced to. It's just that dehydration begins setting in, and dehydration causes you to suffer adverse effects. However, let's get back to the text here. And these people were going to lie in wait to kill him, but Festus answers that Paul should be kept at Caesarea, and that he himself would go there, and that they would then, in verse 5, let them therefore let, verse 5, please. O'Shea is working on mending a boot. That's why he's a little bit slow on this. Let those who have authority among you go down with me and accuse this man to see if there's any fault in him. So he's actually pretty wise in this regard. I mean, this is his first contact encounter with the Jews. And so rather than, coming up to having Paul brought up there, he's going to have them go with him. Perhaps he's read a lot of the accounts of other governors who talk about how stiff-necked and rebellious and sneaky and underhanded the Jews are in regards to Roman officials. Because they were definitely known for that. Most Roman officials had a lot of trouble with them.
So just to clarify my understanding, is Festus says Paul's gonna go down with me, right?
No. Paul's already down at Caesarea.
Oh wait, the Jews are going to go down with Festus, the where Paul is.
Right.
Got it. Sorry.
Those who have authority among you go down with me and accuse this man to see if there is any fault in him.
Right, yeah.
So they wanted to bring Paul from Caesarea to Jerusalem, verse 3, And Felix says, no, you all come with me down to Caesarea and accuse him there.
Right.
Verse 5.
Thanks.
So he stays another 10 days, or 10 stays for more than 10 days in Jerusalem before he goes down to Caesarea. But when he goes down to Caesarea, he waits until a day after he arrives before he sets in the judgment seat and calls the case of Paul. So the Jews, which came down from Jerusalem, are standing there in the judgment hall, and they start laying charge after charge after charge against Paul. Verse 6.
This is verse 7 now.
7, actually, yes, 7. Serious complaints, which they could not prove. I mean, we're talking complaints of a nature similar to this man's a murderer. You know, he went out and he killed so many people, or he's been known to, and you can just dream up all sorts of different things which we would consider serious complaints. And notice that Paul's defense, he doesn't have to do much, does he? Every single time they lay an accusation against him, which they cannot prove, Luke says,
Yep.
he answers them, neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I offended in anything at all. So what's he doing? He's denying wrongdoing against the law of the Jews, so any civil law of the Jews. He's denying any wrongdoing against the religious law of the Jews. And he's denying any wrongdoing against the law of Caesar, the law of the land. So basically saying you have no such thing to hold me against.
Yep.
And so, of course, that pretty much leaves them empty. And especially seeing as how who's the law going to believe? The Jew, which has no proof, or the Roman citizen, which is not having to provide any proof, innocent until proven guilty. You see, Rome is the law.
Mm-hmm.
So the Roman has the higher standing than anything. So what is Festus's recourse? He has only two recourses. Okay. He can let Paul go, judge him innocent, because they have no proof, or he can try to do them a favor. So what's he going to do? Verse 9.
Yeah. He wants to do those Jews a favor.
So he's going to try to curry favor because he's trying to set up a good vibe for the rest of his time that he's going to be in this backwater country known as Palestine or Judea. All right. So he's going to try to curry favor with the Jews. He wants to do them a favor. Are you willing to go up to Jerusalem and there be judged by me concerning these things? Why not just judge him right there?
Well, for one, I would think it would give more credence to the Jews to help him at the home court where all these things went down, you know.
Is there anything regarding the Roman law that they can accuse him of?
No, this is...
So what is Caesarea? It is the seat of the Roman
Jew,
government
right,
in Palestine, in Judea. It is the seat of the Roman government. So if there's nothing that he can point to or judge him on in the Latin court, in the Roman court, why go to Jerusalem? Because that's where the seat of the Jewish law is.
right.
And as
That's what,
governor, he can go there and judge according to Jewish law.
right,
It's a really weird connotation. But also, if he goes up there, then the Jews have more, because of that, because their civil law is there, they would have more power, more authority, not over Festus, but their law takes, is more equal in the eyes of Rome. Not that it ever supersedes, but it's more equal.
right.
Why and that would be why it would be a favor. They've already asked for him to transfer the case back. It's similar to the way that our federal government has federal courts, and then we have state courts, and then we have municipal courts. Okay, municipal would be handling the local, like for example, the counties at a county level. City and county. State courts deal with everything over the state, whereas then you have federal courts, which is any crime against the federal government. Now, of course, a case can be remanded to federal court, and the federal court can remand it back, or you send it back to the states. But especially if there's no standing, or if the federal says, okay, well, you have a stronger case. But they don't have to. So what Festus is doing is saying, okay, I can, let's take you back. Would you be willing to go back to state court instead of the federal court? And Paul's like, well, we're going to see what Paul says.
Before we get there, I just want to point out that the Jews here are in the same position in verse 7 that they were 2 years ago.
Right, back down in Caesarea.
They are saying things against Paul that they could not prove in Acts 24 and verse 12 when Paul is before Felix. He says essentially the same thing. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone or inciting the crowd, entering either in the synagogues or in the city, nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So the only thing that's changed is who they're talking to.
Right.
Nothing else has changed. The Jews are still falsifying information. Paul's still innocent. Just it's before Festus now.
Well, also the wording leads us to the conclusion that there is one other thing different, and that is the amount of accusations. For what's it say? It says many serious complaints, not just a few, because they only had like 3 or 4 complaints when they came to Festus, or Felix rather.
They dreamed up a whole lot more in 2 years' time.
Right. They were building a case, a falsified one, but they were building a case in those 2
Right.
years.
So basically, the only thing you got going to the Jews is more lies and a different governor. I mean, if this was a United States court case, the Jews would be gone. I mean, like, nobody would buy this. The only reason why this is being entertained, it's really a political game at this point.
A
Felix
lot
and
of it is,
Festus want to play nice with the Jews, so they go to their home court. They don't want an uprising, so what do? They entertain it. Let's go to your home court. We can sell it there because I really can't scratch your back here.
right? Right. Let's go ahead and we're going to read 10 through 22.
10 through 22. Okay.
I was just going to stop at do the 2 verses of Paul's reply, but I think I'll just go ahead. I'll go ahead and I think we can hit 10 through 22.
So you think you're gonna get
No,
10?
I know we're going to do it.
Okay.
Only if you get started, though.
So Paul said, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you very well know. For if I'm an offender or committed anything deserving of death, I do not object to dying. But if there is nothing in these things of which these men accuse me, no one can deliver me to them. I appeal to Caesar. Then Festus, when he had conferred with the council, answered, You have appealed to Caesar? To Caesar you shall go. And after some days, King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to greet Festus. When they had been there many days, Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, There is a certain man left a prisoner by Felix, about whom the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, when I was in Jerusalem asking for a judgment against him. To them I answered, It is not the custom of the Romans to deliver any man to destruction before the accused meets the accusers face to face and has an opportunity for himself to answer for himself concerning the charge against him. Therefore, when they had come together without any delay, the next day I sat on the judgment seat and commanded the man to be brought in. When the accusers stood up, they brought no accusations against him of such things as I suppose, but had some questions about him, about their own religion, and about a certain Jesus who had died, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I was uncertain of such questions, I asked whether he was willing to go to Jerusalem and there be judged concerning these matters. But Paul appealed to be reserved for the decision of Augustus. I commanded him to be kept till I could send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said to Festus, I also would like to hear the man myself. Tomorrow, he said, you shall hear him.
All right. So Festus asks, no, you don't. You stay out of that. Put it back. Sorry about that. Festus asked Paul, would you be willing to go up to Jerusalem, then I can judge you there? And Paul, he's been imprisoned for over 2 years for this silliness. And so you can kind of sense his frustration when he says, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. Now, we already know Paul is a Roman citizen. We made that, he made that clear back at the end of 20, or in 22. In 22. And so he's a Roman citizen, has a right to be judged of Caesar as a Roman citizen. And so he says, I stand here at Caesar's judgment seat where I ought to be judged. To the Jews I have done no wrong, as you very well know. He's like, you're not an idiot. And I'm paraphrasing, of course. You're not an idiot. You know I've done nothing worthy of this. We today might say, it doesn't take a we could say rocket scientist, or even a monkey could figure out that I've done nothing wrong. And he says it in that way. He said, I've done nothing wrong, and you know it.
Doesn't take a private investigator.
Well, that's for sure. It doesn't. So he said, if I'm an offender or have committed anything deserving of death, I do not object to dying. But if there is nothing in these things of which these men accuse me of, you gotta scroll down there, bud. Of which these men accuse me, no one can deliver me to them. He's like, okay, if I've done something worthy of death, kill me. I will go willingly. But if there's nothing in these things of which these men accuse me, and you know there isn't, no one, not even you, can deliver me to them. Paul is very frustrated. Paul is a Roman citizen being held in contempt of Roman law for a crime which he didn't commit, and by greedy and corrupt governors who know that he is not guilty. And so that leaves him really with only one recourse, because he sees that Festus is willing to do the Jews a favor. In other words, Festus is going to send him. That's what it appears. Festus is going to send him to the Jews, to Jerusalem. And he knows that the Jews have no love for him. And so he has only one recourse. Very basically a last straw, a desperate measure for all Roman citizens. If their case is, if this is the kind of case, he has the right to appeal directly to Caesar as a Roman citizen. Yeah. And he uses his trump card. I appeal to Caesar. Now, what happens when he appeals to Caesar is an automatic, it's not a get out of jail free card, but it's an automatic ship him off to Caesar. Do not pass go directly to Caesar. Do not collect $200. go directly to Caesar. You take a ride on the Caesar Express. Choo choo. So that begins the proceedings. Basically, once he has made this appeal, Festus's hands are tied. He cannot release him. And we'll see that in the next section, in the final section of this chapter. But that's spoiler alert. So what's he do? He confers to the council. What is he? Why is he conferring with the council? And what council is he conferring with? The governor is conferring with these men, this chief priest and the council that came down to accuse Paul. And you know the words that he's talking to them? You know what he's telling them? He's explaining the situation to them.
Yep.
He has to. Verse 12, please. Shea, coming up. Okay. He conferred with the council, and he answers, "You have appealed to Caesar. To Caesar you shall go." So it was a rhetorical question. You've appealed to Caesar? Are you really ready for this? Well, too bad, because you're going. And so he has basically told the council, my hands are tied. He's got to go to Caesar. And he looks at Paul and he says, "You appealed to Caesar, therefore you're going to go to Caesar." And we know then that, of course, the next step for the council is they've got to get their stuff in gear and in order, because they're going to have to go and lay their case before Caesar.
Yep.
That's the next logical step. All right, so let's move on down. Certain days, 13. King Agrippa. Remember that Israel still had a king. After the restoration, or after Israel came back from Babylon, we don't read much of any king, and there wasn't much until Herod of Idumea. And there's a lot somewhere in my notes. I have a box of these notes, but somewhere in my notes, I actually have a history of the kings of.
Sorry. That was a video.
I actually have a note on the kings of Israel after Babylon, but Herod was not a son of David. And his offspring, I mean, he was from Idumea, and basically from the kings after that, after Herod the Great, the first Herod, the one that we read about in Luke that killed all the babies. After him, his offspring, all the way down to even after King Agrippa, well, they all come from Idumea in that area, which is a small country kind of towards Philistia, if I remember my geography correctly, over in the Philistia, Tyre and Sidon area. But anyhow, if O'Shea will move us over to verse 13, where we're looking at King Agrippa, he's taken the place of Herod. We read, of course, of Herod's dying in Acts 12.
Wow.
And this was a different Herod, different descendant, several, I think like 3 or 4 generations after the Great. And King Agrippa is another descendant or two after that. He's married Bernice, another a Jewess, by all accounts, like of Josephus. Comes to Caesarea to greet Festus. So Felix is out, Festus is in, and the king of the Jews comes to visit with Festus. Now, remember, of course, King Agrippa is only ruling by permission of Caesar. And of course, that would come to an end in AD 70 when the current king, I'm trying to remember which one it was. We're getting really close to that time right now. Or maybe, no, we're later than that time. No, we're not. We're getting really close to that time. When the current king would rebel for the final time against Rome and would be slaughtered at Megiddo. Which, by the way, is the site of the Battle of Armageddon and the time of the battle. Hello, you're dealing with a bare hand and that chemical. Do not do that, please. Now, they come up to greet Festus. They've been there for several days, and Festus says, "You know what? Hey, I've got this prisoner, and he's a real thorn in my side. This guy, his name is Paul, and I'm going to paraphrase as I go through this, so bear with me. This man was left by Felix. He's a holdover from the days of Felix. And when I went up to Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me about this man and wanted to have a judgment against him. So I told them, I said, and here again we have the Lysias disease going on. Let's put me in the best light possible. No matter who I'm talking to, it's always political. Let them put me in the best light possible. Mm-hmm. So in verse 15 or verse 16, to whom I answered, I said, it's not the custom or the manner of the Romans to deliver a man to die before that he is accused. So we already know that they wanted to kill, they wanted Paul dead. And Festus says, it's not the manner of the Romans to do that, no matter who he is. He's got to have a chance to meet with his accusers face to face and to answer his charges for himself. So they came down and without any delay, and on the morrow, or after they came down, on the morrow, I sat at judgment and commanded the man to be brought forth. They they stood up, brought no accusation of such things as I supposed. They wanted him dead, but nothing they brought was of anything I had knowledge of. I wasn't ready for this. Verse 19. They had questions against him of their own superstition or of their own religion, and about a certain Jesus who had died, and Paul affirmed to be alive. So because I doubted, I wasn't sure about this, I said, hey, let's go up to Jerusalem and I'll judge you there. Where all this, where the seat of religious power is. And Paul then appealed to be held against, excuse me, verse 21, please. Paul appealed to be reserved for the decision of Augustus or of Caesar, and I commanded him to be kept until I might send him to Caesar. Now, Caesar Augustus was the first Caesar after Julius. Julius was the very first Caesar, which basically means emperor. And after the death, the very untimely death of Julius Caesar, the nation was thrown into a civil war between Mark Antony and Julius's nephew, Octavius, or Octavian, depending upon which one you want to read. Octavian was the one who curried the favor of the Roman Senate, and thus gained their approval and their accolade as the Rome, or as the emperor. Mark Antony went to Egypt and hired himself an army because Octavian not only appealed to the Senate, but he also won the favor of the armies because he was Julius's nephew. I'm trying to remember. There was a portion of the army that wanted Mark Antony because Mark Antony was a general, just like Julius was, but because Octavian was the nephew and he got the position from the Senate, then the majority of the army went with Octavian. But Mark Antony was in rebellion and tried to capture the throne, the seat of the emperor seat. He failed, and as a result, Octavian became emperor and changed his name from Octavian to Augustus, becoming Caesar Augustus. And he's the Caesar Augustus that we read about in Luke, who caused all the world to be taxed. Which, of course, is what led to Joseph and Mary going to Bethlehem, where Jesus was born. Really cool, right? Well, ever after, not only is all the emperors named Caesar after Julius Caesar, but the seat of power is Augustus's seat. You see how that worked? So, Paul had appealed to be reserved under the hearing of Augustus. Now, of course, Augustus is long dead. We are now in the realm of Nero, or just right at that cusp. So I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. So Agrippa says to Festus, okay, hey, what a great story. I also would like to hear the man myself. So before you send him to Caesar, I want to hear him. And so Festus says, hey, then tomorrow you shall hear him. And that's where we're going to leave off. With Paul kept in chains, reserved to go to Rome to be heard of Caesar. But at this time, he is right now reserved to be heard by King Agrippa and Queen Bernice in front of Festus. King Herod, being a Jew, Queen Bernice being a Jew, actually King Herod being King Agrippa rather being an Idumean, he's kind of one of those slightly Jewish, but slightly not. I think by this time he was recognized as a Jew anyway, but be that as it may, King Agrippa was one who was knowledgeable of the way. He was also knowledgeable of the Jewish law. And so this is going to get really interesting. But Paul, well, he's in for a rough road because he's done appealed to Caesar. And remember Jesus's words. Jesus said in Acts chapter 24, I believe it was. He told him, "Be of good cheer, as you have." Acts 23, verse 11. If O'Shea will take us there real quick. Acts 23, verse 11. Very prophetic. Go ahead, CJ. No noise. You muted yourself. Did you forget about that button down there?
I muted myself because I needed to plug my power strip in again. It fell. So sorry. The Lord said, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you also bear witness at Rome."
So Paul, Jesus told him, "You will bear witness of me in Rome. Be of good cheer." Paul was ready to go to Rome, and this was his means of going there. So even in his frustration at being there for 2 years on trumped up charges by the Jews, he knew where he was going, and he was ready to do it. Because when he was on his way to Jerusalem, what did he say?
I'm ready to die, right? That was in chapter 21 and verse.
Yep. Verse 13.
Yep. 13. For I am ready not only to be bound, but also to die at Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus.
And he told those in Rome when he wrote to them that he was hoping to get over to visit them in the book of Romans. And this is the way that God sent him there. So.
That's right.
All right. Anything else to add, CJ?
No. We did pretty good tonight.
We went a little bit over, but then again, we started the class a little bit late because we didn't have anybody here.
Yeah.
Wake up, Reba. Angie's already sleeping.
Yeah.
You know Angie's already sleeping.
I know that. Well, thank you all for being here, and remember, here at CEM we have an agenda, but it's not hidden. We want to glorify God, edify you, and answer any spiritual questions you may have, help you in your journey to know the Lord and His Word. That way,
Whether we wake to serve God here on this earth tomorrow, or we wake tomorrow to serve Him up there in heaven, you know where we'll have the pleasure of being, because we'll see you then. God bless.